What's up everyone, Sio here with week 10 of the NES. This week we are taking on Kruzwei / Remy, coach of the Philadelphia Vulpixers. She's a new coach to the league and has actually only been here for like 3 battles or so now, I think. But she has a really scary team, and honestly I kind of hate playing new coaches because I don't really know what they're gonna do. So I definitely didn't overlook this game at all and took her team as the threatening team that it is and just tried to plan for as much as I could. If we manage to win this week, we are in for playoffs, so I definitely wanted to make sure, well, we're not like in for playoffs, but we needed a couple of games to go our way, and as of this battle I already knew that they kind of went our way. So if we win, we're in now. So starting things off this week, I brought a Focus Sash Kartana with Tailwind, Swords Dance, Knockoff, and Leaf Blade. 52 HP, 252 attack, and 196 speed. Basically allows me to set up a Tailwind or a Swords Dance against Gigalith or Vaporeon switching in, or even Cinccino if I can take like a hit from it. I can't really take like multiple hits from it that well, but I can take like a hit from it. Tailwind will allow me to outspeed anything that I need to outspeed. Swords Dance will allow me to basically OHKO anything. I think even if Salamence switches in, if I go for a knockoff still does like 80% or something like that. And it's like almost a 2-hit KO, even if I don't knock an item off, which is kind of silly. Basically just kind of meant to be a late game cleaner here. An early game cleaner kind of similar to what HBK brought against me last week actually. I have Waterium Z, Tapu Fini with Calm Mind, Surf, Ice Beam, and Moonblast, 252 attack, 252 speed, and 4 Spadef. Kind of just meant to like turn 1 Calm Mind most of the time, kind of see how she reacts to it, and then just kind of play from there. I know that Remy's kind of a newer coach, so she may not know how scary Tapu Fini is actually offensively if it just kind of sets up in your face. So that's kind of the plan with Tapu Fini this week, honestly. Next up is Mega Alakazam with Substitute, Dazzling Gleam, Psychic, and Hidden Power Fighting. 132 HP, 16 defense, 252 attack, and 108 speed. So I actually owned the Vaporeon Thundurus-T combo in Season 1 of the NES, and I unfortunately learned there that it's kind of hard-walled by Trace, especially those two things specifically, just because most of the things that have Trace have high enough Spadef to be able to take on most non-stab moves from Thundurus, and Vaporeon really only ever like offensively runs like Toxic or Ice Beam. So if it's Toxic, I can just subs up and kind of just sit there and damage it. If it's Ice Beam, it's not really going to do anything anyway. And then I'll basically trace its Water Absorb. If Thundurus-T came, I would trace its Volt Absorb, and then it can't use its like more powerful stab against me without healing me. So that's kind of the plan with Mega Alakazam this week, I guess. Next up is Rocky Helmet Miltank with Milk Drink, Stealth Rock, Earthquake, and Fire Punch. 252 defense, 252 HP, and a little bit of attack. If you look at everything but Miltank on my team, you'll see that as Choice Scarf Cinccino kind of just tears through me. Like all I really have for it outside of that is Hitmonlee and Kartana like switching in once, maybe. Like basically taking a hit from full, hoping it's not King's Rock and kind of just killing me from there. So I needed Miltank this week, and Rocky Helmet seemed to work pretty well. If you don't know, Rocky Helmet triggers for every hit that's there, including on Skill Link, so Cinccino will actually take 5 Rocky Helmet hits in one turn if it goes for Tail Slap against me, which is cool. Next up is Choice Scarf Flygon with Defog, Earthquake, Rock Slide, and U-Turn, max attack, max speed. Basically just meant to speed tie with the Salamence that's set up, and then just spam Earthquake or Rock Slide otherwise. If I need to go for U-Turn, and I decide that this is actually a better lead than Tapu Fini, because I kind of gave myself 2 leads this week of either U-turning with Flygon or just setting up with Tapu Fini depending on what was there. And since her team's a little bit more passive, and at least like my offense does pretty well, or her offense is kind of walled by my Tapu Fini, which can kind of counter it well, outside of Cinccino, which I can kind of just play around, I guess. But before I get into that, I guess, finally we have Fighter Hitmonlee with Close Combat, Rock Slide, Earthquake, and Mach Punch. max attack adamant, and just max speed. So this him only is actually meant to come in against ideally something like Gigalith and kill with a close combat, lower the defense and special defense, and then Wide Herb will boost it back up. And because I used an item, I'll actually get ×2 speed also. Option 2 of this popping is if I'm in against something and go for a Mach Punch, like against Inchino or something, and then she switches into Salamence, trying to intimidate me, I use the Wide Herb and then outspeed and can kill with a Rock Slide from neutral. So there were a couple of different ways that it could work. Close combat seemed to be the more reliable way in practice, so that's kind of the way I'm planning on it, I guess. But before I get into the battle, again, I guess I'll kind of preview what I expected from her, because honestly this is basically the 6 that I expected. Emboar and Vaporeon specifically were kind of up in the air, because I guess I could have seen Thundurus-T or Mega Absol. Vivillon also could have been kind of terrifying, honestly, but I didn't really expect Vivillon because I don't think she's ever actually brought it. I think it was the previous coach who picked it up and she just didn't drop it or whatever. But basically I expected this 6 more or less. Emboar is very, very scary with a Choice Band, and Vaporeon's a pretty good pivot outside of Mega Alakazam, I guess, and Tapu Fini. But I figured that she may not see that as well in practice, I guess. But anyway, getting into this game, I decided to basically just lead Tapu Fini, because like I said, I kind of wanted to see how she played around it. So as I lead Tapu Fini, as I expected, she kind of just leads to get the sand up. Excadrill in the sand is very scary, but because I have Mega Alakazam with Hidden Power Fighting, I can basically come in, trace the sand boost, and not really worry about it, honestly. So I'm just going to go ahead and go for my Calm Mind, see how she reacts. She goes into Cinccino directly, which is kind of scary, but luckily I have Miltank here. Since I'm Sap Sipper, I'll be able to take the Bullet Seed that I expect to be coming in. Unfortunately, I don't get a ×5 attack boost or a +5 attack boost from it, because it just stops after the first one with Sap Sipper. But luckily, I'm at +1 now, and a +1 return, I believe, Oko's Cinccino. I'm actually not that offensive, and I'm more interested in getting Rocks Up instead, because if I get Rocks Up, Dazzling Gleam from Mega Alakazam turns into a guaranteed Oko, unless she's like max HP, max Spadef or something like that. She leads Emboar, which is very scary because Emboar hits very, very hard, and I'm in with my normal type. So the only switch I really have here is Tapu Fini. So I'm going to go ahead and go into it. As you're about to see, it's not even really that good of a switch because I'm still like almost 2-hit KO'd by this, which is kind of ridiculous. I figure she's not going to stay in here, but I can't really afford to go for a Calm Mind and not try to get damage off on something at this point. I predict her to potentially go just into Salamence here, but in case she decides to go back into Gigalith, who with the Spadef boost would normally live a Surf, I decided to just go for a Waterium Z Surf and just try to do the damage I can, I guess. It's a little risky because, as you can see, she just goes into Vaporeon and I just give it health, literally. But that's okay. It's also interesting, I guess, that Misty Terrain ended that turn because, as you're about to see, she's able to go for a Toxic here and actually Toxic my Tapu Fini, which is kind of annoying. I'm not really sure why I went for a Calm Mind, but I decided to just stay in and go for damage at this point. I'm also not really sure why she went into what is supposed to be Salamence, I guess. Oh, I see it. There's Salamence. Its face right here. So I'm not really sure why she went Salamence. I guess she was expecting me to potentially try to Calm Mind again, and she could have tried to get a Moxie boost, I guess. But I was basically just committed with Tapu Fini at that point to get damage off. I'm also committed with Tapu Fini at this point to just let it drop. A little surprised that Scald killed, but I'm just going to keep rolling with it at this point. And I'm going to go into Alakazam, who I can basically just sub up against this thing, because like I said, I'll be able to outspeed. If she goes for a Scald, I'll have Water Absorb at that point. So, like I said, Trace Water Absorb, go for sub. Even better is she goes for Toxic, so I get a free turn to kind of just punch something. So at this point, I'm just going to kind of go for the damage that I can go for. Gigalith comes in, but Gigalith doesn't really take this that well. And I get a Spit F drop, which is kind of lucky. It didn't really matter, I guess, because it was still a 2-hit KO, even with the Spit F boost, which is kind of ridiculous. So I'm just going to go and take the kill now, because this means that Excadrill long term is not quite as scary. Like I said, I still kind of have answers to it. And then she goes Cinccino here. I'm predicting that she's going to go for the Tail Slap this time, because she knows that Miltank has Sap Zipper. If she goes for the Tail Slap, she'll be able to break the sub and probably kill me. Because if you didn't know, Cinccino's main ability is Skill Link, which means that she's guaranteed to hit 5 times. Because she's guaranteed to hit 5 times, she'll probably break my sub with like the first 2 hits, and then have 3 like full hits to get off on damage. But unfortunately for her, I have Rocky Helmet, which means that as she's doing 7% to me, she's actually doing more damage to her. And because she got worn down pretty perfectly earlier in the game, she actually manages to take herself out with her own Tail Slap. And Melissa's still sitting at 50%, which is pretty awesome. I'm like really happy that this actually worked out, honestly. I was kind of hoping this would happen, because I was hoping I would basically be in a situation to force her to go for a Tail Slap. And since she hadn't actually seen my Rocky Helmet yet, it definitely seemed safer for her to go for that than it actually was. So at this point, I don't have a switch in to this at all, and Miltank has kind of done its job. So I'm just gonna stay in and go for an Earthquake and try to get some damage off. Just kidding. So I actually almost managed to take this thing out. Unfortunately, I don't get a kill here because it's the recoil that ends up taking it out, not the Rocky Helmet. If I was a little bit more offensive, I could have gotten another kill for Miltank here with the Rocky Helmet. But unfortunately, that just drops to recoil instead. But that's okay, because all she has left is Excadrill and Vaporeon, neither of which want to stay in against the Kartana, especially since I'm Focus Sash, so she has to Scald me to be able to break that anyway. I'm just going to go for the Leaf Blade, take my kill, and at +1, no Vaporeon in the universe should be able to take this. Except for the fact, if you didn't notice, that this Vaporeon's actually level 100, because we sure somehow didn't notice that until this point of the battle. So at this point, in basically any other battle, like, it would have just kind of like been over or whatever. But because I happen to have a Mega Alakazam with Trace and Water Absorb, I'm actually still able to kind of potentially pull this out, even though this Vaporeon is 50 levels over and the battle's like basically over. At this point, I know I have playoffs locked, so I'm kind of sitting in here trying to gauge damage, I guess. Thankfully she's not actually trying to like fully wish stall, but at this point we're kind of just clicking buttons while I'm trying to talk to the mods and figure out what to do, honestly. And I guess this is also a fitting time to point out that we did this battle on April Fool's Day, which also kind of contributed to it. Basically, in case you didn't notice, on April Fool's Day, Pokemon Showdown decided to change all of their sprites to like really weird or cutesy things, I guess. Because of that, we didn't actually notice that this Vaporeon was level 100, especially since it wasn't brought in until the replay of this. By the way, Spit F drop means that I'm actually able to kill this thing even though I'm 50 levels lower, which is absolutely ridiculous. Technically speaking, she could have wish stalled me here, but I think she was just trying to kind of end the game at this point, because Kartana definitely should have just killed this thing. We had +1, there is no real universe where something at the same level would win. So we ended up talking after the game, me and the mods, and we ended up deciding that because I was able to actually kill Vaporeon and it still ended in a 3-0 anyway, I might as well keep the stats, because the game kind of ended the same way it would have if it would have been a forfeit anyway. It's definitely a rule that we're going to be addressing in the off season, because I feel like people have kind of been bringing level 100 stuff a little bit more often this season. And it's kind of weird that we have like a rule in place that like punishes the other coach also, I guess. And it's something that we were planning on kind of addressing in the off season anyway, because we've had like 4 or 5 different battles to it, but since this is the first time it's actually come up against me, I thought it's the first time I'd like address it in a video. But outside of the level 100 Vaporeon, I actually thought this game was like pretty much perfect. I feel like my prep for this game was fantastic. Thanks to everyone who helped me practice this week, obviously, because I needed every single game. Like I think I was tweaking stuff literally until Remy sent the invite. But it meant that this team was really, really well practiced. I felt like it was really well put together. Everything basically did what it was supposed to do. Choice Scarf, Flygon, and Hitmonlee didn't even have to touch the field. Obviously, if they would have touched the field at the end of the game, they would not have lived anything. Flygon may have actually outsped, since Vaporeon's apparently very slow. And even though Alakazam is 50 levels lower, it still outspeeds. But overall, I thought that was a pretty good game. Excadrill in the sand is always really scary, on top of Salamence, on top of Cinccino, on top of Emboar. Like, I feel like all of those are like very threatening Pokemon, and I feel like our team actually kind of came together and pulled it out well. This means that we do have playoffs like secured. We're probably likely to be a top 4 seed depending on how we finish the season out. There's a chance that if I like lose out for the rest of the season, I guess like Nerd could hop up for me and I'll be like 4th seed. But basically, because I have playoffs locked, I'm gonna kind of just have fun with the end of the season, except for any game that I have that may actually like impact playoffs, I guess. Next week we are hopefully taking on the New England Rowlets, if he's not too busy. I know this season's kind of been like ridiculous for his work schedule. He is the champion of last season, and he actually beat us week 1, so I'm like really kind of looking for revenge. So fingers crossed that we're able to find a time to schedule that. I actually already have a team built for it, and I'm going to test it after this video's done. But anyway, thanks guys for coming by. This video was a little weird because this battle was a little weird with how it ended and how it kind of like ended up transpiring. But I wanted to upload it because I thought that the prep and like everything in game outside of the Vaporeon was actually pretty good. Like, for there being something that was like 50 levels over, I feel like it was still actually like a pretty fair fight. So I guess I don't really know how to end this, but thank you guys for coming by, and I will see you next week when we take on the New England Rowlets. Bye.